Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, every week hosting a business communication expert so that you and I can learn tips and strategies that will benefit our business. Terrific today to have as my guest Deborah Boswell, a business communication coach, trainer, and consultant who gets dramatic results for her corporate clients throughout the country. Deborah brings an exceptional voice, passion, and expertise to the pursuit of business communication. She blends her skills in speech pathology with over 20 years of corporate experience to help solve a company's specific communication problems. Deborah is author of the book, and I have it here to display Become a Confident Business Communicator. I highly recommend this book. That's not why I have her on the program. It's not just a plug. I highly recommend the book. I gave it a 5-star review. When it came out in 2017, I would still give it a 5-star review. I encourage you to get that book. And that book is not something that she just happened to think up. It came from her decades in the trenches, working with hundreds of managers and executives and training thousands more in seminar settings. As for her background, Deborah received her undergraduate degree in education from Auburn University and a Master of Science from the University of Montevallo. She is president of Professional Speech Services of Alabama and co-founder of Child's Play Therapy Center, both in Birmingham. So join me now as I welcome Deborah Boswell. Hello, Deborah.
Good morning, Bill. Great to be here.
Terrific to have you with us. And I want to start by saying that I know what launched me on my career and dedication, my professional life to the study and the advancement of communication, but I really don't know what prompted you. So what started you with that?
Well, to be honest, as a teenager, before I could get braces, the orthodontist recommended I have speech therapy. I had what, if you remember in those days, we called them buck teeth. My teeth had overjet, they poked out. And so the orthodontist
And so you got teased a lot in school, I would imagine.
Yeah, I could eat corn on the cob really well. Okay. And when I went through speech therapy, I remember thinking, this is a pretty cool job this lady has. And the reason I remember it so well, the public schools didn't provide the therapy at that time. So I went to her home and they said I had a tongue thrust. Looking back on it, I'm not sure that I really did, but he wanted to make sure that my swallow pattern was correct so that I wouldn't continue to push my teeth out after the braces were removed. So that started my first initial interest. And then as a high school junior, my all-knowing wise dad asked me to go to Auburn University to go through some career planning, college planning examinations or evaluations with a counselor there.
That's a good step because many of us don't get that. And it's very fortunate that your parents were wise enough to do that. Otherwise, we're just floundering around and wishing and having no idea what direction to go. So yeah, go ahead with that, please.
Trying to figure it out. That's exactly right. And I really owe my dad a lifetime of gratitude for that, because speech pathology came up, psychology, a teacher. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. And speech pathology sounded just like what I wanted to do because it worked with the whole lifespan from birth to death, really. There are all kinds of communication issues and swallowing issues. And that's how I got into speech path, loving communication.
Okay, I know in your book, one of the things that caught my attention and I thought was interesting and amusing, and I'd like for you to share it with our guests, and that's the fact that somebody seeing you as a speech pathology, longtime professional and a communication coach, they might think, gosh, you know, Deborah was just a star speaker from the outset. I'll bet the first speech she gave, she just wowed them. Tell us what really happened.
No, the first speech I gave was actually, again, at Auburn University in Haley Center, room 2370. I'll never forget it. And as you know, it's in my book, but I was the president of our National Student Speech, Language, and Hearing Association. We called it NISLA. And my job on that particular day in October or late September, was to introduce our speaker for a symposium. And I failed miserably. It was that flight or fright syndrome. I'll never forget the pounding heart, the dry mouth, the blurry vision, and the worst, as I've mentioned this to people before, and they'll say I've had that happen to me, but was feeling like my eardrum was going to rupture. I was so nervous. The blood was pounding so hard. My eardrum was pulsating. And I remember thinking, I just want to get off this stage. This is an awful experience. I'm ruining it, and I want to get away from this. That was my first experience speaking.
And you vowed you'd never get in front of an audience again, I suppose.
That's right. And I didn't for a long time. And then I started teaching, believe it or not, Sunday school. Who is a harder audience than a group of 7th grade girls to keep them engaged? And I had some success with that. I realized to make this content relevant to this age and, of a child, wow, you really have to think like they think to make it engaging. And then fast forward 10 years from there, I started a private practice and realized the best way to promote a business is to speak about it. So I knew it was time to face the music and manage this fear. I don't think I've ever overcome it. I don't know if anybody ever overcomes it.
Well, one of the things that I say about that, Deborah, is, and I have a short book on Amazon, 25 Ways to Control Your Stage Fright and Become a Highly Confident Speaker. And notice, please, that I use the word control, because as far as getting rid of it, I really think there's some advantages to stage fright. It keys you up and it gets you ready for the occasion. I've said often, both in my coaching and in personal conversations with people, that if I had a presentation that was upcoming and I wasn't on edge about it, I would be very worried. And as a Southern lady, you can understand my saying that if I've got a speech coaching client, I have one now I'm working with, I'd rather have to tame a wild stallion than wake up a sleeping mule.
That's exactly right. I totally agree. Yeah, I think nerves mean you care. Think about an athlete. An athlete is not relaxing, reading a magazine and having, a cup of coffee before a race. They are stretching out. They're trying to manage the nerves. I tell my clients, nerves mean you care. If you don't have any nerves, if you don't have any adrenaline surge, you need to question, am I thinking I can do this, fly by the seat of my pants, so to speak? And some people do that. And that does create issues with concise messaging going on too long. So I agree with you.
The level of energy we have is going to determine the level of energy that our audience has. And if we're bland, if we're just out of it, then why would we expect them to stay awake? And going back to your teaching,
that's right.
What was it, 7th graders in Sunday school?
Yes.
One of the ways that we can get more comfortable, and I say again, don't overcome your stage fright, learn to control it. But one of the ways to do it is to accept and even seek speaking engagements, because this is one of those things, like many activities, if we keep dodging it, then we'll never feel confident with it. So I know for people who are reserved, are afraid, are shy, that's a challenge. And yet, to get to the point where we can share our ideas clearly and persuasively and energetically with an audience, you don't just stand up and do that for the first time, do you?
That's exactly right. And free speaking engagements, that's how I started. Rotary clubs, Kiwanis, Sertoma, they are all looking for speakers. And if you have a hobby, it doesn't have to be business related. If it's something interesting that an audience might find intriguing or challenging or inspiring, you have an audience in a lot of these professional groups or social civic groups. So that's exactly right. The more practice, the better you become, and the more comfortable you become with speaking. I'll say this, with COVID, most of us have not done live presentations. And I did one yesterday for the first time. I did one other during COVID, but for the most part, the first time in a year, a little over a year and a half. And I was a little rusty. And I thought, wow, this is what happens. I've been speaking virtually, but I've decided virtual presentations are easier than live. I really do. I think once we all understood the equipment and the technology. If you are speaking and you need notes, I tell my clients, tape them around your screen. Nobody will know. A glance down and a glance up, but when you're live, you don't want to hold notes, and you certainly don't want to look at the speaker notes you have on your PowerPoint slides. And so going back to live presentations, it's good for us. It keeps us on our toes.
It not only keeps us on our toes, it's just absolutely wonderful to have the energy, the feedback, the participation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're more likely to get participation when we're there with them in person than we would on the internet, because people are more responsive when we give them some meaningful activities to do, or open it up for questions. That's much more likely to happen with an audience in person.
Absolutely. I agree.
In your book and in your coaching, you talk about something which many speakers are not very adept at, because they're afraid of it and they don't feel comfortable with it. And that's pausing. Talk to us some about the value of pausing, what it accomplishes both for the speaker and for the audience.
The pause is a valued tool of the speaker, but most people don't utilize it because they're uncomfortable with silence. And over a period of time, I'll be working one-on-one with a client, and I'll realize it feels as if the communication never stops, like drinking from a fire hydrant. You've heard that before. And when we go back and analyze my video of them speaking, I've realized two different options, two different things are going on. One is no pause. They're just speaking without stopping. It just, everything comes there. And many times their breath becomes shallow because they're saying so much. But also something I've realized, Bill, is the use of conjunctions. And, so, but, and, so, but. You could call those vocalized pauses, but there is not like the same filler word every time. It's a conjunction. It's almost as if they're afraid to give up the floor. And what I learned is if they could replace the and, but, so with a pause, it gives the listener time to process what they're saying. It also allows them a moment to breathe, to swallow whatever they need to do to get back on point. And I believe you might have seen it on LinkedIn, but I'm going to read the quote from Mark Twain, that the right word may be effective, but no word was ever as effective as a rightly timed pause. I just ran across that the other day. I actually sent it to a client. I said, this was written for you. And he responded and he said, absolutely, I agree. It's just trying to put it into practice. It isn't slowing down your rate. We live in a very fast, I want it now society. And so I don't believe you should slow your rate. I believe you should insert pauses. Would you agree?
Well, a couple of things I should pause here.
Put it into practice. That's right.
A couple of things I would say about that. One is, I think people don't pause because they just want to get through with it. It's a matter of nerves. And then secondly, they don't realize the value of it. And then third, many people who have not, I guess I would say, mastered the pause. Many people think that this pause has just gone on a long time. Yeah. But this is the value of audio and video recordings in coaching, because you can show somebody that a pause which might have felt to them as though it were 7 or 8 seconds, it was 1 or 2 or 3 seconds. And you may not even put a clock on it. You can just say, that might have seemed like a long time to you. Of course, a pause seems especially long to us if we've forgotten what we're going to say.
Yeah. That's a scary pause.
And that's a scary pause. Yeah. But I'm going to copy down and use that comment about Mark Twain's observation about pausing.
Yeah.
Mark Twain said so many brilliant things. I've got a biography of his that I've read. He was... you and I have done some professional speaking. Mark Twain was absolutely the early rock star of the lecture circuit.
Interesting.
And interestingly enough, going back to stage fright, as we were discussing earlier, This biographer tells in the book about Mark Twain's first major speaking experience. It was in San Francisco. They'd sold tickets to it, had a full house. Mark Twain stepped out on the stage and for a full 2 minutes could not get started. He was overcome with stage fright.
I have not heard that story.
Yes.
That is good to know. That is good to know.
It is good to know that one of the most famous orators of all time, paid professional orators on that Chautauqua circuit, as we know it, he, the first time, just could not get going. That should be encouraging to all the rest of us, I think.
Absolutely. That's a good story to utilize when you're teaching presentation skills. So thank you for sharing that with me. I did not know that.
We have
2 minutes is a long time.
Yes. 2 minutes is a very long time. I can imagine the audience looking at each other and coughing and
feeling bad for him. Yeah. Worried about him.
Deborah, right. we have time for just one more question. It's an important question. All of these are important, but this is one I certainly don't want to leave out. You deal a great deal with accent reduction. Tell us, please, why is that important to us professionally? Yes. And then secondly, how do we accomplish it?
Okay. Accent reduction, and notice, just like we don't talk about removal of fear for speaking or nerves, it isn't eradication or elimination, it's reduction. There's nothing wrong with an accent, whether it's a regional dialect from the United States, since that's where we live, or a foreign accent. The problem is when the accent gets in the way of your message. So in other words, it's maybe people can't understand you, and clarity, intelligibility is compromised, then it might become a problem.
Or they're paying more attention to the accent and than what you're trying to say.
That's exactly right, which frequently happens with a Southern accent. And as you can tell, I have a Southern accent. It isn't the same way of speaking I had 20 years ago before I started working on my I vowel, the INGs. Instead of right, light, night, it's right, light, night. It isn't what y'all doing, it's what are you doing. I can code switch too. I move into more natural, relaxed speaking with family versus sitting here with you speaking. But professionally, when the way the message is delivered, the accent utilized or the way of speaking impedes communication success, I believe that's when people turn to someone like me, and there are people like me all over the country who can help manage that strong accent, whether it's regional or foreign. And then the steps to take is to find someone who can help you first identify what the issues are. With many of my clients from India, right away, I'll hear the P, T, and K. Okay, in English, we aspirate those sounds. And when I say aspirate, it has airflow. And they do popcorn, ticket for ticket. And it gives a staccato feel to their speech. So if we can manipulate those three sounds together, that can have a big impact. And almost every other language in the world distorts our short I. We say big, pig, little. That vowel typically is changed to a long E, big, pig, little. And working on that makes a difference. That's in a lot of words of English words. And so those are just some examples of, it isn't a great big overhaul. It's sometimes just nuanced parts of their pronunciation that we can target to increase intelligibility. And I tell my clients, foreign accent, do not lose your accent, and definitely teach your children your native language. What a benefit and a value for that child growing up. But I've had some parents tell me, we just want them to learn English, because we live in the United States now, but it's such a benefit to speak two languages fluently. Americans barely speak our own language. Our grammar system is so complicated.
That was going to be what I say. Some of us don't speak one language fluently.
That's exactly right.
Well, I grew up in South Mississippi, and one of the things I suppose that helped me with accent reduction was living in different parts of the United States. In my previous careers, I lived in the Midwest for quite a few years. And one of the things you and I and everyone knows is if you go someplace and you stay there a week, you will probably even if it's unconsciously, you'll start talking like those.
That's exactly right.
Who are there.
And that's a benefit for you because it helps you assimilate
Yes.
into that area. Yeah. And a benefit for you later, like now, that served you well.
Deborah, what a fascinating conversation and so informative. We appreciate it so much. I know there are those who will want to get in touch with you, so please share with us your contact information.
My pleasure. My contact information is Deborah. It's the long spelling, Deborah. So it's Deborah at DeborahBoswell.com. Best way to reach me. This has been so much fun, Bill. Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you as a guest, and we'll do that again. I've known Deborah for 10 or 12 years, as is the case with many of us on the internet. We've never met in person, but I've had great respect for her work and so happy to have her on the Biz Communication Show. Since Deborah has given her contact information, I'm happy to share mine. Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go there, check my services for corporations and leaders. Give me a call and we'll talk about your communication problems and how I can assist you with them. Thanks to those of you who joined us on video. Thanks to those of you who've been with us on the podcast. Thanks again to Deborah Boswell for being with us. Hope to have you with us next week for the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton.